Hello.
Hi, Sarah. I can hear you.
Awesome.
Great. All right, getting some people coming into the room. Hey, Mark, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. Our attendees list is growing. So for everyone on the call, if I can just get someone out in our Epic Council team to validate you can hear me loud and clear via the chat, that would be helpful. Or a thumbs up using maybe one of the emojicons. Yeah, all right, there we go. Appreciate all of you. We will get started in literally 1 minute. Just want to make sure all of our panelists are here and accounted for.
Hey, Christopher, Matt's here.
Hey, Matt. Matt, any chance have you heard from Mr. Wiltshire?
Just a few Slacks this morning. I'll check on him.
Awesome. He did not have a chance to respond to me yet. I see him out there. Mr. Wiltshire, I'm promoting you to a panelist. You should be able to. Or I might have promoted the wrong David. I apologize. 1 second. And then we'll get started. Actually, Matt, can you help me with that? I apologize. The names are going by too fast.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to share my screen and introduce our team. We've got a good agenda, and hopefully we get some good value out of this today. So let me share my screen. And you should see a ServiceNow Epic Council landing screen, the presenters mode. Hopefully that's what everybody sees. Excellent. All right, team. So we're back again. It's been since, believe it or not, December since we connected as a council, and some of that's been, I think, due to really my availability and running some new teams inside of ServiceNow. So I won't make excuses. We're back on track, and we'll get these going again. Hopefully, shooting for every 60 to 75 days is kind of our internal goal. So I'm going to cruise through this. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The Zoom that we're on will be recorded. All this content will be shared via community.servicenow.com under our healthcare special interest group. If you don't know how to access that area, please in the chat use that, and any of our panelists can, or hosts actually, can help you navigate to that location. All your phones are on mute. That is intentional, so please use the Q&A feature inside of Zoom to ask your questions. And Matt, myself, and others, we will make sure that everyone's questions are answered. And if that's something we can't answer, we will make sure we follow up with you. So a good agenda. I'm going to go through council purpose here in just a second, but we have a couple of special speakers. Well, we'll have David Wiltshire, who is our Epic Council champion. It's going to take us really through just a few minutes of kind of setting the perspective of the importance of a common service data model as it relates to healthcare, and specifically Epic. And then as kind of the bonus on top of that, we have Mark Bodman, a senior product manager here at ServiceNow, to actually walk us through the common service data model and some of the insights. And maybe we can start making some relationships as it's related to a healthcare space and setting. So looking forward to that content. Then we have Vishaka Saint. That's going to be taking us through basically a healthcare roadmap of our upcoming releases. So we're not committing to necessarily any product by dates or times, but we did want to share kind of the models and focuses, and Vishaka will be taking us through that. To wrap up, we'll have Sarah Struble taking us through a few marketing updates. Really, that's things really focusing around Knowledge 21. That's right around the corner. For those of you who will be attending, we thank you for your support. For those of you who are interested in attending, we can make sure we can get you some information there as well. So I'll be brief for any of our new members from a Epic Council perspective. This is really born out of the customer's perspective. It's customer led and ServiceNow enabled. So if you have topics, you have conversations, you have use cases that you want to see brought to the upcoming councils for this year and beyond, please share those with any of us on the call today from ServiceNow, especially with David Wilcher as well. We can collaborate around that. We want to make sure that we represent the topics that are most interesting to you, just like the Common Service Data model has been a big topic for several months, and we've been able to secure some speakers for that. Want to reiterate, this is not a place to sell, so you're not going to hear us telling you that you need to buy something or that you need to license something. We're happy to try to take those questions offline and get them back to your account teams if necessary, but really this is about you, the healthcare industry, and how ServiceNow is playing in that space. All right, Mr. Wilcher, I hope you're mic'd up. Are you good to give us a couple of minutes on why CSDM has been important to you and the conversations you've been having?
Sure, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you, good sir. Good to hear your voice.
Awesome. Yeah, you too. So yeah, I guess folks have me to blame for the CSDM topic today, but I liked it. I hope it is because it's useful to folks out there. So I had reached out to Chris and we were talking about potential topics. And I had kind of mentioned to Chris and the team at ServiceNow that as I talk to other healthcare customers who have reached out to me, I've probably had 7 since the beginning of the year, 7 other systems outside of UW Health kind of folks reach out to me and say, hey, what are you guys doing with CSDM? We're trying to model CSDM. We're reading the white papers. We're watching the labs, we're doing the now learning content. And it's really difficult to try and move, I think, towards a more kind of service-oriented mindset in your IS department and try and really align with the CSDM if you can't model probably the most important application in most healthcare environments. So you say, great, I'm totally on board with CSDM. We're ready to start doing this. And you turn around and look at your app portfolio and say, well, if we can't do it with Epic, none of the other stuff matters. So how do we do it with Epic? I've sure some of you out there probably watched, there's like an Accenture webinar going around where they've modeled Epic one way. And I know at least for my organization and a few other people I've talked to, you look at the Accenture model and you're like, that doesn't look at all like how we actually structure the support of this internally, maybe for that client. So I'd kind of pinged Chris and said, hey, it'd be great if we could maybe get somebody from the CSDM team here to talk to folks. So it's not just my interpretation or an individual's, but maybe someone from ServiceNow. As an organization, I'd say it's very relevant to us. We're actually in the middle of migrating into the kind of CSDM crawl walk stage. So we've been doing a lot of that work internally. I've got a major go live of application services for our organization on Tuesday as we migrate into the first kind of stages of CSDM. And for a lot of folks, I think if you're looking at how you as an organization start to better represent what you deliver in the form of services and not, I'm an HL ADT analyst, but we provide a service and ADT is part of that. The CSDM is super relevant, right, for creating that kind of single language across your IS department and actually across your business for what you deliver across your organization. And that's no small feat to migrate into. So I'm excited to kind of have Mark here to talk to us a little bit today and hopefully maybe be able to answer some questions from folks in a better way than I've been able to one-on-one with some of you guys.
Well, David, you're probably not giving yourself credit. We sure appreciate you taking those calls on behalf of what ultimately is a data model. I'm just gonna segue here over to Mark. So Mark, just to kind of set the stage, we know in healthcare it's a best of breed environment. A lot of applications are purchased with the intent of delivering great patient care, great patient services, great community services. So there's quite a bit of, I would just say, detail between I bought great apps, I want to deliver great services. It seems to be where we start and want to end up. I think it's that middle ground that we're definitely wanting to hear more about as a council and community. Hopefully you're able to enlighten us a bit with some of these insights. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Mark Bodman. I'm based in Austin, Texas, or nearby Austin, Texas. I think I've talked to a number of healthcare customers in the past. I don't have a background in healthcare. I've got a background mostly in enterprise architecture. Back at Dell, I was here at Dell. Worked there for about 10 years. So I've got a little bit of different background. But as an architect, I'm always looking at the pattern and looking at how things work. I'm responsible for the CMDB, CSDM, and what we're calling service graph products here from an outbound product management point of view, which is really working with our customers, putting together some examples, and a lot of the stuff that you'll see on YouTube and some of the material that we present to folks is all coming from, a lot of it's coming from me. And we do have some epic examples that we've put together. The one that you're probably referring to from Accenture, that is something that we actually have worked together on. I don't have a background in Epic, so I was really relying on the Accenture folks to figure that out. But I can share a bit more information about what that looks like. And also, I just wanted to get an understanding of how many people are familiar with CSDM itself. And I can do a really brief review of it, and then we can kind of jump into maybe the Epic example to show you what that looks like, and maybe take some questions about things. Would that help?
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of hands go up. I think it'd be good to level set on what CSDM is, how ServiceNow views that, and then obviously the example of an Epic service that would be helpful. Then absolutely we can go into some Q&A.
Great. So I'm going to take over the screen sharing. Looks like you still have it there. Sharing. So yeah. Okay. And all right. So I'll get back down to the example here. I just want to take you through a really quick high-level overview on Service Graph and where we're going. We have this idea of understanding the full life cycle of digital products and services that you create for internal or customer use. Things start off in the planning, and then they go through the whole dev, release, deploy process, and then operational. So probably most of you have seen DevOps. We've extended that with what we call service as well, because there's a continuous service management, whether it's internal to your stakeholders or external to partners, or maybe your customers, your health, the patients that come in to see you in the hospitals. And so the service graph represents the full extent, and it goes beyond the traditional, what we would normally call a CMDB. And the reason we're going beyond it is we're picking up elements in the model at that conceptual planning stage, or we're going to be starting to flesh out things that are happening in the build and coding stage. We have a DevOps product for that. So we have to look at everything from an end-to-end perspective, and people want that full life cycle view. So we have another team that's building something called a digital portfolio workspace, which is the ability to see everything together in one view. The CSDM model, we've been at this for a number of years now, but our history is we let customers do whatever they want. We provided, some basic tools and a lot of flexibility, but every customer did something quite different. And back in the 2017 timeframe, I got together. I was representing the ITBM portfolio up in this, planning stage, and I got together with my ops and service management friends and colleagues here, and we said we need a common way to do things, because we're creating the same information in different places depending on the product you buy, where you start. And thus CSDM was born to kind of stop that, to curtail that, to take that CMDB and go beyond it, because we had needs that stemmed further up the stream here, especially in my old product. I used to be the product manager for app portfolio management, which is a very high level planning tool. So as we evolve, we start to fill in the gaps along the way here. We needed a common model, and that's kind of what CSDM represents, is that framework that describes what that model looks like. And we've been working with all our product teams to make sure that they implement the model or leverage the model wherever possible. And we add more components as new shared entities become obvious for us. So those are, it will continue to evolve and we'll continue to add to it. So when we get into CSDM, those three areas kind of map to these three colors that you'll see in what we're calling the design, manage, and consume domains of the model. So CSDM, we separate out the different areas of the model based on where we are in the life cycle, but we want to connect it all. And it is also referencing what we call the foundation domain, things like organizational structures, location hierarchies. That's all foundational, and we use it sort of across the board. So everything kind of sits on that foundational data. So that's the basics for what we have in the CSDM framework. And I'll just go to the main slide that shows what it is. We have entities that are in the design phase, and these are all more or less conceptual in nature. Here you capture a lot of the enterprise architecture type information, the business capabilities that you have, the information objects at a conceptual level. You know, is this customer patient data, or is it billing data, or, you know, kind of some idea of what kind of data you have. And then the most important thing at this level is the business application portfolio. It's what are these apps that we have. It doesn't represent how they're deployed. It just says that these are the things we have and these are the things we're managing. The application service represents the deployments, right? You may have the same application deployed 5 times, so maybe sometimes 1 or 2 in test environment, some in dev environment, and of course in production environment. When you think about Epic, what I've seen a lot of cases, Epic is deployed multiple times for each hospital. So it's configured to do something different depending on what hospital you're in. And we'll get into that example to really talk about that. And then underneath each of those deployments, you have specific hardware and software that's there. So that software and hardware could be in the cloud. So I have a whole another talk track on that. We can get into it at some point, but we bring that kind of entity in there to say, okay, this is the test environment in the cloud or production environment for this particular use case. This is sort of the core for CSDM. It's understanding what do you have conceptually, logically, how is it deployed, and then physically, where's the server, where's the hardware that's associated with that deployment. So conceptual, logical, physical, those are the tiers. And then from there, we kind of stem off to create those technical services, which are the lower level infrastructure tier to manage the specific infrastructure as it comes and goes, to be able to manage the platforms. And we'll get into what that means in a minute, but you have some of these applications are actually platforms, which other applications are built upon. And my understanding is Epic is sort of like that. It's a platform and you've got modules on it. So it had, in the example, when we get into that, we'll distinguish the platform itself from the applications that are on the platform. We also have a technology consumer part here. These are the folks building new apps. So ServiceNow itself is a platform and there are apps on it. So we fit the same pattern. And as a product manager here, I have to use whatever the platform provides as capabilities, and I build upon it to do something more specific. On the right-hand side, this is what we call sell and consume. And the idea here is that we have these offerings that define what it is we do, and there's a catalog that suits a particular business customer. And the business consumer can be internal or external, but the idea is you can have a specific offering for a location. So in the healthcare business, I know you've got hospitals that have specific instances of applications that they would have to go to. So you can funnel that particular consumer based on the catalog and where they are, or the group they belong to, or the department they're in from a BU perspective. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we know who those consumers are and what they have access to when they come in and they request or leverage something in IT. And the last thing that we actually have is we have this fly level. So we kind of implement CSDM in stages. And at the fly level, we kind of deal with the outermost information. So think about the core being here, and we kind of flesh it out this way, and then the cream on top with this kind of information. This allows you to manage the portfolio of services or adding information objects when you have the rest of the model established. It's hard to manage the information objects unless you have the business application already established. So we kind of add that on later in our tiering. So that's a really fast overview of CSDM. We have courseware, we have a lab that we get into to describe how this all works on our platform with various tools. So I'll send a bunch of links to the folks later so you can kind of access and learn more. So I wanted to pause there real quick. I know this isn't a lesson on CSDM. We don't have the time for that. And I wanted to get right into the Epic example. Is there any quick questions I can answer?
Hey, Mark, it's Matt. In the Q&A, there's a couple questions really, and this might be addressed down further in your talk track about how this would apply for self-service within Service Catalog or within the service portal by having these services defined. And you can open up the Q&A just to see the specific questions maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Presents itself to the users in the service portal. So the CSDM by itself isn't presented because this is more the data model that folks that are managing the platform need to understand. What we do is we provide those catalog entries that allow people to access what they are granted access to or already have asked for. So we have something in the system called subscriptions. So if I'm a user that comes in and I belong to a certain department, that might be an entitlement that gets you a subscriber access to an existing system. So the subscriptions can be for an individual user, if it's a one-off, a location for everybody in that particular area, or for a particular business unit or department. So look at the subscription capability that we have in her service portfolio management, and that's how we manage access, and also the fact that if you move from department to department or hospital to hospital, you might see a different request catalog based on that context. Big hurdle here underway. I don't know where to go enter a request. And that's really where we try to create a single catalog, which is contextually smart enough to know who you are and what you should be able to see. There's a lot of functionality in the catalog function that we have on our platform. And so you can start to leverage that information more and more and make it more tailored to the individual or situation like the location. Here at ServiceNow, we have something called follow me printing. And what that means is, depending on where my geolocation is, I find the printers nearest to me on the globe. So if I'm in Singapore visiting, customers, I can see the nearest ServiceNow printers, maybe in the Singapore office. So that's information we can add and we can leverage in that catalog experience. Best practice, identify which apps are used at a specific location. Yeah, it really goes through that service offering, because when we deploy the applications, right, we're deploying maybe for a specific user, but it's really setting up the offering and setting up the rules in terms of how those offerings are exposed to the catalog, which make it more or less consumable. When you may be deploying 10 versions of this application in different locales or different hospitals, but you got to set up the catalog so access is now tied to the intent. Some things are going to be global, some things are going to be specific to a locale, but it's really, when people log in, you have that information, and it's important that you leverage it in that catalog experience. They get routed to the right one, And then a little bit more to know about applications CI to be discovered. Yeah, so the key thing here with these tiers, this conceptual, logical, and physical tier, this is discoverable. So the CMDB CI Apple table is down here. The application service, I like to think about as an instance or a system. These are specific pieces of software and hardware configured to work together. Now, there may be dependencies on other application services out there, like LDAP or maybe a sister deployment that it exchanges data with. This we can capture too in the model, and often do. So, but from a dependency point of view, or from a planning point of view, you plan at this level, right? And the design, this is where you decide to invest in something or get rid of apps. And then, of course, the underlying application services are where they're represented in terms of deployments. And then finally, all the code, because you don't just deploy a piece of code that runs the, you know, the logic, but you also have to deploy the hardware, the load balancers, if it's a cluster, if it's got storage arrays associated with it. So all of that has to be configured per instance, and that's what the app service to infrastructure helps to manage. So I think that covers most of those questions. Service mapping basically is the product that we sell to map each application service. So each instance where we can understand how those underlying piece parts are used within that particular instance. So it's a quick dirty fire, answers there, but hopefully it gets to most of the overarching questions here. Let me dive into Epic, and I have a number of platforms, and the platforms are all constructed in a very similar way. So in architecture, we like to identify the pattern, and once we understand the pattern, we follow the same pattern for every instance, every use case that we find that matches the pattern. So in this case, we have a healthcare platform, which is of course Epic, and we're going to look at the architecture type to identify the app that's on the platform versus the host. Because Epic, the way I understand it, and I'm not an expert, but Epic is kind of a platform which you enable different modules on depending on what it is you want to work in that particular instance. And in this case, what we have is established 3 applications that are on a specific application platform, Epic platform. This Epic platform is really the application host, and there is a direct relationship between these apps on that platform. This is kind of think about this as there's a dependency there. And this is, again, in the design view, right? We're looking at it from a pure design point of view in the blue here. This is what people like the architects would know when they're doing system designs. You would have this kind of information available to you. Now, when you deploy it, that's where it becomes an application service. And then what we're seeing here is we've got a couple of different modules that are on a particular platform, and we use a depends on relationship here. From a service management point of view, what this sets it up is if this particular host goes down, these 2 modules go down, but the modules themselves are independent from one another. So you can have one module fail and maybe the other one's chugging along fine. Like I said, you can have dependencies between these things as well. So that can be, if this one's dependent on this one, if this one goes down, this one's still chugging along. But if the other way around happened, we might have a problem. So if this one depends on this one and this one goes down, this might have interrupted service here. So it might be degraded. So that's how we use the dependency arrows. That's how we manage these things. And then, of course, the modules don't know that they're on hardware. The hardware relationship is held by the actual platform here. Doesn't mean you can't have hardware allocated to the actual modules, but in most cases, it's kind of obscure from the actual modules on it. Just like when you use ServiceNow, the platform is on hardware, but the apps on the platform don't know what hardware it is. It doesn't really matter. And I want to just take out just a couple more levels here. What we have here is the platform services and hosting services for the infrastructure. So we have kind of 2 layers represented, people that watch after the infrastructure layers, and then we have people that manage the platform itself. So you may have people that understand how Epic is deployed in general, but they don't know the apps on it. And you'll have different folks that understand the apps on it. And that's why we make this distinction up here. You got different owners. And then from a capability point of view, they're providing different capabilities. So you have a business capability up here that is about medication management versus patient management. All might be part of Epic, but they're actually in a different space here. Okay. And I don't know Epic. I don't know if this is accurate. This is what I was told. I can obviously change this based on actual data. And when you flesh this out to a full implementation, this might look very different, right? So that's kind of something to keep in mind. The other thing I wanted to show you is you may have different versions of the software installed. So this one represents an application on a server for your production environment, and this might be an entirely different install with a different version of the software. And of course, it would have its own model around it. And the last thing I wanted to kind of cover is really where these different offerings are available. This is where you place the SLA and you can connect to the catalog. You would also track your number of users here. And then from a service portfolio, this is where we kind of look at the roll up of that information. So if the MRI functionality needs access, for example, for 2 different modules, then they might go through these 2 different offerings, and the overall service has 2 different offerings that provide that kind of capability. So this is a very quick high level. I know it's probably for experts in this field, you probably are saying, well, what about this? What about that? Can we see it, everything deployed like a real hospital scenario where I have 20 hospitals and maybe I've got different deployments for each hospital? That can certainly be done. That would definitely require more than 1 page. So I wanted to pause there, and it looks like we have 1 question. With Epic, there's also other infrastructure applications, cache. Yeah. So the other infrastructure applications, there's kind of 2 modes, okay? So when you have an instance, everything under that instance is going to be illustrated here. And if it's another application service, which runs the database, that can be illustrated as part of that particular application service. If it's a shared database, there might be another Epic install that has a dependency on that same database. So there could be relationships between these application services. That's what that depends on, kind of represents. That's kind of what we do here. This depends on, obviously, is a really hard dependency because it's modules on the Epic platform, but you can certainly have those dependencies between entirely separate systems if that's the case. Like if this my chart depends on this Epic platform in some way, there might be an API call that kind of calls out. We can manage that and understand sort of the nature of that dependency. So if this goes down, these guys maybe have degraded service. But that's the nature of what we need to manage from an operational point of view, so that when there is an issue, when there's a change, we can see the trickle effect of dependencies and understand ultimately what's not going to work, out at this level. And that's where we can start assigning the right resources to troubleshoot it, because somebody else might own this deployment versus the deployment up here at this level. So this is somebody else's deployment somewhere else in the data center or in another hospital, if that be the case. So I know it's a really quick sort of run through, but I'm hoping it starts to make sense based on the previous overview. The one thing that we're starting to really focus on is these product models, because product models are how we understand the piece parts. And we have versions of hardware, versions of software, and it's not just one piece of software. There's the database service, there's the operating system. There's a lot of product models involved in these complex systems. And the key is that we can sort of understand all those piece parts, and we can kind of look at it from a risk standpoint at that application service to say, hey, we're running outdated hardware, or there's a piece of software that's going to be end of life next year. We'll have to upgrade it. So we can kind of look at that from a deployment perspective. And then the nice thing is, if we have that traceability all the way up here, we can kind of say, which business capability are we going to invest in, or let's not do that anymore because the software is too expensive. We'll get rid of those apps and maybe we'll outsource that capability to a partner or something. All right. Vision offering used along with catalog items for Epic module support. I'm not following the business value of using offering and service catalog. Well, here's the thing. Offering is where we deal with the specifics in terms of SLAs and connection to the catalog. So without the offering, we don't have that. Okay. So if I go back to the first diagram of CSDM, we need to get to that level of detail to be able to connect it to the catalog at all. So the offerings are what connects the catalog. It's not the service. So this over here is out there to manage multiple offerings. So it's a one-to-many relationship between offerings, and the SLAs hang off of offering and also price. So you may have tiers of offering. You have a gold, silver, bronze level of offering. Now, if it's the same service, you may only have one, so you don't have to actually have many. But and if you're using our Service Owner Workspace, Service Portfolio Management solutions, it will prescribe that. You can't really put it out there unless you have the offering described and connected. So one of the things we're doing is working with each product team to kind of ensure that the model is used, even if you're not, ready to leverage all the complexity. There's something we call in architecture. There's an architectural pattern called model view controller. This is the model. Okay, you're looking at the raw data model here. And there's a lot of there's more nuances, obviously, that you're seeing, but this is the model. The view is what you see on the products we sell, and the controller is all the logic. So what we're doing is we're automating more and more of this. So eventually, we're going to have something called the digital portfolio workspace, where the application and the service is in one spot, and the offering and the application service down here are going to be the things that that connect those two, and that's going to eventually come back together when it comes to the product model. So we want to manage everything like a product, and what I can send some links to some of these future oriented topics, but probably too much to get into in this particular discussion. But that's where we're going. We want to ensure we manage that consumer provider relationship. We want to manage how these are tiered on one another, because there's so many, I would say, connections that we need to manage over a period of time. Please describe the catalog process you envision. It's not that I envision. We ship the catalog that way now. So for example, if I log in to the system using your terminal or a phone or whatever device, I can look at the location of the person and use that to tailor the catalog. And the catalog can then, of course, go to the right offering. And the offering, of course, is going to provide access to a specific application service. Now, when you engage the catalog, you can pre-allocate, a subscription, or you can have a request process which automatically routes the request to the right downstream systems or to the approver. Sometimes I might need an approval process, but this person has never been to this location before, but they're logging in, asking request to a certain service. You might have an additional step in the process, which is what the catalog process is all about, to approve that particular individual to access that particular instance of an application they've never logged into before. But the thing with the request catalog is the services aren't there just purely for support ticket. We want to make things self-service and contextual to the users that use the systems. Otherwise, you have these forms out there, and if you've ever gone to an incident management forum and you've got every single possible thing you can select, right? Nobody knows what to select. And that is pure stupidity, because if I know where that user is, I know who they are, I know that they've got subscription access to these 10 systems, I don't need to display all those options. I can tailor the options to just what matters to them. And if I'm really smart, I can even display a little window on here saying, oh, this system over here is down because the server's offline. We expect it up in 10 minutes. So by putting in that kind of capability, I now provide a single portal in which I give the customer a very tailored experience to be able to access and do what they need to do.
Yeah, Mark, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Hey, this is Dave. I think I see Jonas saying yes. I think that's similar to where we're at, where a lot of our Epic requests tend to come through a global like Epic request form with a lot of options, and it's fairly complex. And I think one of the things we're trying to do right now as we look to take next steps with CSDM is really think through how we start to define the offerings so that we can say, hey, you work in this location, you work in this region.
Yep.
Maybe you have these requests available, and maybe they get routed to these teams because they support that region or they support that location, or maybe they support that module. But I think increasingly, and I'm sure in much larger systems than mine, people are like, well, this is the team you work with if you're in this region, different team than this.
Yes.
And so I think that makes sense. I think one of the struggles that certainly I've talked about with a couple other customers that are in similar places to where we're at is like, one, a little bit about who in an organization, like I see you guys have that role defined as like customer service manager. Like typically what role in an organization is responsible for defining those offerings, kind of working maybe with the application support teams to define those offerings, and then also like how you see managing the users aligned or the subscribers to those offerings, like where you can leverage automation so you're not manually saying like, these are the 10 people for this offering, and how you scale that. And I think the second part of maybe a question I would ask there is like, is there any kind of best practice guide or model around how you start to develop your offerings and put those on the catalog and link it? Because I see Josh's questions, and I have certainly had those questions too, where I'm like, how on earth are we going to manage all these offerings? How are we going to define them? Whose job is that going to be? And how do I look at Epic and not require all my Epic analysts to become experts in the service catalog and offerings? How do I kind of give them a framework of this is how you want to be thinking about structuring your offerings?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get to when I talk about something called digital product management. This is a kind of a hot topic. What we're trying to do is bridge the gap between the folks that understand how to deploy code and folks that are managing sort of the service management portion, and then also the request access, because a lot of times the operational folks deal with the request and as well as problems that happen, right? They're in the operational break fix sort of role. And there's a big divide between what I would call that service owner responsibility and the app owner. What we're trying to do is marry these guys together and actually make it the same person. So when I, as an architect, am designing my application or bringing in a new module, let's say it's a brand new Epic module, I need to understand not only how it's going to be deployed, but who consumes it, and how do I leverage this information to be smarter about providing a catalog experience and a support experience that's specific to that set of users. Historically, IT has been horrible about that. We've had literally a wall between the development side of the house and the support side of the house. And I'm guilty. I lived most of my life in development, and I didn't care about what happened to my colleagues over here providing access or providing support for my applications. I got a good friend of mine, Greg Terosian. I met with him a couple days ago, earlier this week, and he has no hair. He's got PTSD. And it's because I basically threw a lot of stuff over the wall and I didn't care about what his job was. We're trying to change that and be full life cycle. And that's what digital product management's all about. It's the marriage of the app owner and the development side with the actual consumption and operational side. But one of the reasons we added the foundational element to CSDM is because every product on the platform needs to be contextually aware. So when I'm designing this application to be used only in a location, right, I'm aware of the catalog constraints. Only let this thing be used by people that are in that location when they come in and they request something. So, but there has to be logic implemented in the catalog experience, and I have to be able to marry that up with the offerings and, of course, the backend systems that are specific to that location. But you gotta design your applications with the full life cycle in mind, including consumption. But today, everybody has a different job, and nobody seems to care about the next job or the one before you. And we got to change that. We're looking at that, goes back to that very first slide, right? We're going to have digital product managers that are managing these things through the full life cycle. And we have teams. We have somebody on the team that's maybe the owner, somebody on the team that does the code, somebody on the team that does deployment, somebody that deals with the operational and service management aspects. But we're shifting everything from silos to a full lifecycle view. And that goes right back to the planning and design. If you don't have an understanding of who your customers are at the design, they're going to have a horrible experience. And we have to think about it like a product manager. Okay. Epic is a product and you've got customers to serve. And if you got to make that experience spot on, otherwise they're going to hate you. Even though Epic works, they're going to hate the experience of getting to it. Does that make sense?
I'm going to jump in for just 30 seconds. If you could summarize, as we need to move on to our next presenters, sorry. If you could just summarize overall, I think 50,000 foot view, what's the real value here for a healthcare organization, and understanding that we at ServiceNow are still modeling this out. We're sharing some use cases. Clearly, there's more, as both Epic and ServiceNow continue to evolve and the industry evolves.
Yeah. So I would say CSDM kind of makes it easier to understand how the underlying data is connected or used by various places along the value stream. What we're doing is we're making sure all our product teams are more tightly integrating or using that data for every single use case, whether it's a change, and the change is for a specific location, and helping to eliminate the number of fields you have to choose or the amount of research you have to do. And in my mind, okay, this is my, as a patient in hospitals, my goal is that when I get there, your employees have the right tools working at the right time. And if they have a problem, they can get it fixed quickly so that I don't die on the operating table. So to me, if you can eliminate the number of choices on a form, to be proactive about notifying people that this location's impacted by an outage, this machine won't work, don't try to use it. That to me is the value. Keeping people alive because you've saved them a lot of time and searching or hunting or not knowing what's really going on.
Got it. Mark, thank you so much for taking some of your valuable time to speak to our teams here and the council overall. It's been a really popular topic. Realizing we probably didn't answer every question that everyone may be thinking or all the different scenarios. David, myself, Matt, and others, we will continue to source these questions and see if we can, do some sort of collective response back, maybe through the community SIG page, with more conversations around this. And Mark, I know we can reach out to you. Yeah. And there's another question. If we modeled other things in a similar fashion, yes. The answer is yes. And I'm open for suggestions. I'll add more examples, and I'll be publishing those on our YouTube channel. So I'll send out links to that, and you can subscribe and watch for those. That's great. I'll make sure I get you our healthcare SIG page. That way you can post those directly so we don't miss them. Excellent. Thank you. Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. All right, I'm going to take over sharing the screen, team. We've got about 13 minutes left for our next group of presenters. One second here. All right, should be able to see our healthcare roadmap. This is going to be brought to us by Vishaka Saint and Sandeep Pandita. I didn't introduce Sandeep at the very beginning. That's my fault. I just had an oversight there. So Sandeep, I had sent you my apologies via Slack internally, so I send them in front of everyone. I'm going to turn it over to this great team to really walk us through our upcoming release as far as models and focus in healthcare. And Vishaka, I can run the slides from my side if that works for you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Vishaka Sant. I joined ServiceNow about 6 months ago. My background is, Kaiser Permanente, where I led digital transformations for them for more than a decade, and other healthcare institutions in Texas. And so always been at the heart of healthcare and IT and bridging that divide. Sandeep?
Oh, hi, Sandeep. I'm the Director for Outbound Product Manager for Healthcare. I'm coming from payer provider and involved in healthcare. I was recently in Highmark Health, kind of the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Eastern Pennsylvania, and managing both the clinical and digital assets for the provider as well as the payer end. So right now we are focused on launching healthcare specific products for ServiceNow. And Vishaka will talk to you about Rome release of what we are doing. So
awesome. If you want to go ahead, Chris. So, in our best faith effort, trying to show a little bit of what's happening, and just know that it might be different when it actually comes out. So I think where we really want to start is, next slide, please. Really around just what's happening in 2021, right? And just a little bit of a snapshot, and just some updates from Q1. So COVID, I think everyone felt the challenges from the pandemic. And we see that here in Q2, especially going into the later half of the year as vaccines are more prevalent, market conditions are improving overall. I think that, we're also seeing from a standpoint of partners and ecosystems, how do we actually work with the right system integrators and the right partners so that we're bringing, solutions to market that are meaningful and applicable to the challenges that provider organizations are facing today. At the same time, we want to be very cognizant that, healthcare is changing, the landscape is changing. We've had existing products like EMR Health, vaccine management, physician onboarding. But what we're really looking to do is launch a very healthcare and life sciences specific SKU this year, which really focuses in on, a data model with some pre-built capabilities with a focus on very specific apps that Sandeep is going to get into. As far as just expanding the customer relationship, having more of these types of engagements so that we can really understand the true challenges and what the demand is from the front lines and bring that back into a process that allows us to have a look at the solutions and the ideas and have some structure around, scalability, applicability, and value to a larger customer base as well. And just a little bit analyst sentiment, I think that we're still regarded as having, reliable solutions in the market, especially during the pandemic. There was a lot of different sentiments happening in with other organizations. But, I think that we are at a magic moment right now within healthcare where ServiceNow has a platform and the capabilities to help really fill in the gaps and be systems of engagement as well. And then just finally, from a marketing standpoint, Sarah will get into this in a little bit. HIMSS is approved for right now. It's on site, so we will have a presence at HIMSS. And then next slide, Chris. And what this really is going over is I just want to, pause and there's this quote that we have here that we leverage. It's not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent ones, but the ones that are most responsive to change. And at ServiceNow, what Darwin said is extremely applicable because, as I said, healthcare is evolving, ServiceNow is evolving. We are really moving away from this notion of just, at Kaiser, we saw ServiceNow as a ticketing system, right? And it's so much more beyond that now that I see the applicability. We're trying to focus in on the patients. What are we doing for the clinicians and staff to streamline their workflows? And then from a strategy, operations, and technology perspective, how do we modernize these digital platforms to offer scalable modular solutions and have really an omni-channel experience that is enabled by convenience, but it's powered by technology? And really, overall, the sentiment is what's our role in actually shifting to a value-based ecosystem, right? For ServiceNow, we can enable and help by providing, applications that help improve patient outcomes, but also look at organizational health. What are we doing in supporting you as an organization to make sure that you're optimizing your legacy applications and actually providing efficiencies? So what this is really going to talk about is, the ability to touch the entire ecosystem and actually start on this pathway to evolving from beyond just, a ticketing system into something that's more applicable and relevant as we see trends in care shifting into the home, shifting outside the walls, having more of the virtual visits and the policies that actually regulations are going to help enable increased volumes of those types of services. Next slide, please. Sandeep, you want to take over?
Sure. So as we are building like the healthcare specific products from ServiceNow for the industry, what we are looking at is expanding the current base functionalities of ServiceNow. So if you think about ServiceNow already has the customer service management and the field service management as the base offering. What we are doing in the product management is looking at that platform capability, adding a healthcare core foundation and healthcare capabilities. You will see that in the upcoming slides. And then solving a specific use case and a specific problem in the healthcare, right? So what we wanted to do is twofold. One, leverage and utilize the base platform capabilities, CSM, FSM, analytics, AI, workflow engine, all the things which are already built in on the platform, customize it, utilize it, and make it enabled for the healthcare. So a healthcare organization can really like download, get the license, and start using the application pretty much same day, if not the same week. So there is no, like, for lack of words, development, tinkering around on your end. So there is a faster go-to-market and a faster utilization and ROI return. That's part one. Part two is, as we build on this CSM and FSM, we will be building multiple solutions, multiple apps. Again, you will see that in the next slide. All of them will come as a part of the roadmap of the product, right? So this way you are able to get additional ROIs, additional go-to-market capabilities from the initial purchase of the product you have bought, right? So, a really a short-term gain, but a much bigger long-term game. So if you think how we are building, so as I mentioned, I'm going to, just to align everyone, I'm starting from bottom to the top. We have a platform which has CSM, FSM, ITOM, we have a HR workflows. It already comes inbuilt with mobile application, AI, which is like intelligence, and then the security is already wrapped in. We have built a healthcare and life sciences data model. So the data model is the foundation, practitioner, patient. The data model is FHIR HL7 enabled. Again, the reason for that is twofold. One is it is becoming industry standard now, mostly because of the CMS mandates and also because of other upcoming API mandates driven mostly by CMS and other organizations. On top of it, we have built basic capabilities. Again, this is think about like the healthcare foundation or healthcare core, what we are referring. We have built application specific in field operations as well as service management and also in visit management. So visit management includes your healthcare consent as well as your digital documentation. Because healthcare consent, because it is pretty much a part and parcel of any healthcare interactions. And then protocols is what we are defining as any healthcare specific protocols. So think about protocols as your pre-visit, during visit, post-visit, your specialty, your therapeutics. So those are the different protocols which can drive a lot of other engagement, different solution, different pain points. From the Rome release point of view, as I mentioned, these are the things which we are identifying and resolving for a specific pain point. We are calling it like the patient journey management or the patient access, which is a patient call center for any inbound inquiry. So if someone as a patient or a provider has question about scheduling, about billing inquiry or scheduling inquiry or insurance inquiry, prescription refill, you can build a workflow and you can build a playbook which a call agent can use to resolve those issues. This is what we are releasing in the Rome, but as we move forward, we will be adding additional use cases. We have identified few use cases, but if the team members here think there are additional use cases which they are facing right now, we would definitely like to hear from you and build those workflows, build those applications for your use case, which I'm pretty sure everyone else in the healthcare organization can use too. So we want this relation to be like very symbiotic, very mutually driven. We have some point of view, but we do want to listen to your point of view and see like, hey, what are the pain points which we can solve with the application and the platform which we are building right now. This is going more in details into the data model we have. Again, you can see we have the data objects, and again, we are providing a data fields. One takeaway I would like to say is this is the current version of our data model, but not the final version. We will be expanding on this data model as we identify more use cases and we build more solutions on our platform for healthcare clients. These are some of the screenshots and some of the applications we have. So this is like a patient 360, which provides a centralized view of customer activities and history. As you can see on the left-hand side, you have the patient name, basic information. We have captured the health insurance, their care team, and then we have other interactions with them, open cases. We have all the appointments they are scheduled for. So this provides a call agent a very comprehensive view of the patient.
Sandeep, Vishaka, I know we got 1 minute left. I still need to get to our K21 updates with Sarah. Just to let all of the attendees know, this is, again, it was recorded. What you saw here, you can review again. If there's questions specifically for Vishaka and or Sandeep, please post those. Matt and I will work those offline and get you individual responses back. We'll have your email addresses from the registrations. Vishaka, Sandeep, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Sarah, we've got about a minute and a half. I'll buy us a minute and a half.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll send this out on the community platform. We have a number of webinars and recent articles and some interesting podcasts. So I will add all of those links to our recap post on community, and we can skip ahead to knowledge.
All right.
Yeah. So knowledge is coming up. Virtual event. Registration is free and it starts on May 11th. From a healthcare perspective, we have a number of really interesting sessions that we have planned, including a keynote with Mike Lucy, our GM for Healthcare and Life Sciences, Connie Schieffer, who's our head of product for Healthcare and Life Sciences. Also a great fireside chat component with Greg Richardville from SCL Health. For a deeper dive into the product that Vishaka and Sandeep were starting to go into today, we also have a session and an associated demo that you can see that really unfold, as well as a conversation with Scripps. With Clark Kegley from Scripps. We have a number of really great customer sessions, including one that David Wilcher from UW Health will be doing. But across our entire portfolio, we have sessions with Wellstar, Spectrum Health, Common Spirit, St. Jude's, NHS Scotland on their COVID rollout, and I think about 30 or so other healthcare and life sciences sessions with partners and others. So make sure you check that out and register. Looking beyond knowledge, we also have HIMSS coming up, as Vishaka mentioned. We're going to have a great booth experience there, really expanded space and experience. We're also doing a lunch and learn, and we'll be in the HIMSS interoperability showcase as well. So more details to come on that whole experience.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, I know we were about a minute over. I apologize. CSDM was a bigger topic than I think any of us anticipated, but I'm glad we were able to cover it. Again, if you have questions about anything to do with knowledge and or some of the product roadmap that Sandeep and Vishaka were able to share, I'll stay on for capturing those in the Q&A. You can always reach us, obviously, through the community page as well. So with that, I'm going to end our call today. Thank you all for the support, and we will see you hopefully in the next, after knowledge. So I'm kind of saying it's going to be in the summer. So we'll say it's sometime in probably the June timeframe for our next Epic Council. So until then, thank you all.
Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you to all of our panelists and presenters.